Hey guys, you're watching the Best Practices Show where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all across the country. And if you're looking to improve your practice, one of the ingredients you might be missing is happening everywhere. And I've got one of the greatest icons in our industry, the dental consulting industry, who's worked with some of the very best practices all over the country to show you how you can put this ingredient in and make everything better in your practice. Debra Engelhardt-Nash, she is awesome. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. You don't want to miss this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. I hope you're having a great day. And again, just loving the feedback. And thank you guys for watching. Really, really appreciate it. And a lot of great questions coming in about how people can improve their practices and things they can do. And today is going to be one of those special episodes where you're going to get the masterful magic ingredient that is really hugely key in making sure that you have effective patient communication. It single-handedly grows a lot of the practices with Debra. And I'm going to introduce Debra in just a second. You're going to see how awesome she is. But before we get started, just a couple show notes. We are shooting this episode live on Facebook. So if you're watching this either during the live broadcast or a little bit later, please ask questions. Put them in the feed, and we're going to make sure that we get you the right answers to your questions because we love the questions. And we love the questions so much that every week we give away an Apple iWatch and 2 tickets to our Practice Growth seminar called Activate, just because the questions now are getting so good. So ask a thoughtful question, and we love it. We love it. Now, my guest today is one of the heroes. She's one of my heroes, one of my mentors in this this great industry, not only the dental industry, but the helping part of the dental industry, which is the consulting and coaching side. And she's been around, she's seen, and actually works in her husband's practice, which we'll talk about, who's one of the top dentists in the United States. So you'll get a chance to see intimately in that. But she's been a great friend, a great mentor, a great teacher, and also a great leader, the ADMC. Debra, that was awesome. You guys were so gracious, and it's such a great group of people that work together to protect this industry that we love so much. And so if people don't know who you are, Debra, and they've been living under a rock, who is Debra Engelhardt-Nash? Please give us some insight if you haven't.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Kirk. Well, I've been in the dental industry since 1985. Seen a lot to come and go, but my formal education is a school teacher. And it was interesting because one of the students in my dental business school last week said, "You were born to be a teacher. You're still a teacher," which I love. So, teacher by degree, and got involved in dentistry in the early 70s. Started my own company in 1985, but was involved in dentistry since the 70s. Matriculated from a single practitioner to a group practice, and then I was recruited out of an audience to be a consultant for Pride Institute. Back then, it wasn't even called Pride. That's how long ago it was before they
Really?
And so I was a Pride consultant. It was called Pacific Institute at the time. Switched over to Pride. And then in 1985, started my own company and have been working as Debra Engelhardt ever since. Lived in Seattle up until 1995. And then I moved into Charlotte, North Carolina. And that's where I am. And that's where I conduct my my business. I work in dental business school. My husband and I have the Nash Institute for Dental Learning, and where we do postgraduate training for dentists and their teams. Yeah. And I do dental business school there, and I still work a few days a week in the practice, which is a great practicum for me. So when I talk to teams about how to answer the telephone and how to ask for money and how to overcome objections, I actually still do that. So I'm speaking from a place of experience and something that I still do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about why this is so important and how this actually works. Your husband is one of the highest producing per patient dentists, I think. I mean,
in the top 1%.
Top 1%. And you said, it's really about this component that we're going to be talking about today. That's really, it's the cornerstone of what you do. And so what is this ingredient that most people don't have, and if they could have, would change everything?
Wow. Well, I think obviously the key ingredient, not only for my husband's practice, and we're a little bit different. I mean, when we talk about practices and we talk about the key ingredient, not only are we one of the top producing practices, but we also carry no accounts receivable.
Wow.
We don't accept any insurance assignment. We are strictly a fee-for-service practice, and all of our patients pay in a preoperative visit prior to treatment. So we have to really engage our patients in a relationship, so that they understand and appreciate that what we have to offer is different and exceptional. And that is why our protocols are different and exceptional, and they're worth it. The investment that they're making in our practice is worth it. And that's the responsibility, not necessarily of the treatment, the procedure that we provide, because most patients don't understand the tertiary anatomy of a crown. They don't understand that we're using the best materials unless we tell them.
Right.
So for me, the most important ingredient is how do we engage the patient in a relationship? Most people probably have already heard this, and who are listening to this broadcast, that 85% of the reason why patients choose a doctor's treatment is based on the relationships we develop with them. The other 15% is the other factors, whether that be insurance or location or doctor's reputation. So it really is all about how do we engage the patient in a relationship with us, so that whether it be the new patient phone call, the consultation, the recare visit, they leave saying, "Wow, that was a different experience. I've never felt so important. I've never been engaged so much." I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to my dental visit. I'm looking forward to meeting these people.
Right.
I think that's pretty critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it goes from not only obviously from the moment the patient is attracted to the practice, whether that be from social media or referral or calling around, to coming in as a new patient, to treatment, presentation, consultation, all the way to recare. How do I keep the patient? Not only how do I initialize the patient into the practice, but how do I keep them there? I mean, I have attrition rate is critical in many offices, and I know there are some consultants and there's some companies, some speakers who say that recall isn't important. To me, it's really important. I mean, a high percentage of doctors' restorative treatment comes from existing patients.
Right.
So I need to continue to keep my patient engaged.
Absolutely. And so the question becomes, how do we do this? And you and I talked about this beforehand. We're so on the same page. This ingredient, when you talk about relationships, it's really contingent on one of the cornerstones, which is questions, and so this ingredient, because you're not a big fan of teaching scripts, it's okay to get people started in the right thinking. But if we could take this, not only in the front desk, or the administrative area, but throughout the whole practice, and switch it from having to tell patients something to instead ask a question, it transforms everything. So walk us through that, because you have some great insight on all of this. All of this.
Fun. Well, I have a couple of things that for me are vital to talking to a patient. First of all, when a new patient calls the practice, so many times I go into offices and the new patient calls and they say, "Hi, I'd like to make an appointment." And the receptionist, telephone coordinator, new patient coordinator says, "Oh, if you're a new patient, here's what we're going to do. You're going to get an examination, and you're going to get radiographs, and you're going to get a full mouth series, you're going to get a periodontal probing." And, all of a sudden, now the patient's saying, "I'm getting a probing? What's that?" You're going to get a comprehensive treatment plan. And they go through the menu, and I say, "Stop. I mean, that's not what the patient needs to hear. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. That's not why we do it, and that's not going to engage the patient." So for me, I would change that around when the new patient calls and say, "You know what? First of all, let me be the first to welcome you to the practice." And This is one of my first vitals. Always ask permission before you start asking questions.
Right.
So always ask permission. We have a tendency to say, is anything bothering you? Do you have any artificial joints that we need to know about? Is there any? And so we start asking health history questions. We start asking names, addresses, social security numbers, insurance information. We never even got the patient's permission.
Mm-hmm.
So I would want to say, so that I can best help you, may I ask you a few questions?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what inspired you to call. That's, for me, critical. Tell me what inspired you. That day, that patient made a decision to make a difference in their dental life, and they were inspired to call you. And some experts would say they've already chosen your practice at that point. Now the responsibility of that person is to validate that they made the right decision.
Yeah,
that is a brilliant. How can you differentiate that?
Yeah, that is a brilliant question. And, I know Lois gives you credit. She uses that question all the time, Lois Banta. Yeah. And it's a really cool way to look at it. And I would imagine you get some great responses when you ask a patient that. Give us an idea.
Well, and they will tell you all sorts of things. And I also say this, that especially on a new patient phone call, this needs to be an uninterrupted call. Suddenly a patient is telling me that they are a cancer survivor or that their husband passed. I mean, I have had this where she said, my husband when he was critically ill and he was in hospice, and he said, honey, I know you've always wanted a better smile, and what I'd like you to do after this all is over and after the insurance money and everything's taken care of, I want you to take some of that money and I want you to put it towards your new smile. Do that for me. And I want you to look up and smile at me while I'm in heaven. I mean, I am on the phone. I'm like tears in my eyes. And I said, my gosh, we have to get you in soon so you can look up to the skies. So I want to hear everything the patient wants to tell me, which means I never place a new patient on hold. It totally breaks up the momentum of establishing a relationship with that person when I say, oh, excuse me for just a moment, because another call's just come in and they're more important to you. So, Yeah, so I never place a new patient on hold, and I will allow them to tell me everything. I've heard all kinds of stories from the first phone call, and I will give them all the time they need to help them feel that they chose the right office for their care.
Yeah,
and I tell them the same thing. The new patient experience in our office, we typically schedule X amount of time, depending on the practice I'm in, but we will give you all the time you need to get the information you want to help you know you made the right choice and you're making the right decisions.
Yeah, I love that. Now go back to that, because this is so good. When you're on the phone with a new caller, you take whatever time you need. So, and there's different thoughts in dentistry. Some people say don't spend any time with them, just get them in. But what I'm seeing here is that you really want to find their motivation of why they called, because that piece of information you share, that's really the cornerstone for why they're going to do the treatment in the first place. How long are your typical phone calls when people call your office? They can go
5 to 10 minutes, sometimes longer. And I know that some people say, oh my gosh, we don't have that kind of time. I have a client in a rural, say that fast 3 times, in North Carolina. They have 150 new patients a month. Wow. 150. So they're going to spend that kind of time with each patient on the phone? Yeah, they have 3 people answering the telephone. They have, so that they can. So they have, when I say 3 people answer the telephone, that's all they do. They don't schedule. They schedule the new patients. They schedule the patients who call in, but they don't do anything else clerically at the office. They take calls. Here's the you have to ask yourself, well, what are you trying to accomplish, Debra? Mm-hmm. I want that phone call to be above usual and customary. Right. I use that term for a reason. Mm-hmm. I want the phone call to be above usual and customary because our behavior is above usual and customary, and that's why we charge above usual and customary fees.
Right. That's awesome. That is awesome. And, you and I talked about this too, the use of scripts. Sometimes people, when you're giving service like that, that's above everyone else or above what their normal experience would be, you can't just work from a script, and tell us why that's so important, because there's got to be some individualization to that. There's got to be some heart behind it when you're communicating with patient.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important. One of the things we haven't gotten to is that need to have an opportunity also to tell that patient about the practice. Once again, I would ask permission. I would say, "May I tell you a little bit about our office?"
Mm-hmm.
Wait till you meet. They'll base. How did you hear about us? Is certainly one of the questions. And they say, "Well, I Googled you, or so and so told me about you." And I said, "Ah, so you've had an opportunity to see the kind of work that we do because you visited our website." Yes. Well, wait till you meet the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is he a brilliant dentist and he's a brilliant dental artist, but he is affable and humble. He's a great listener. He's got a great chairside manner. I want to set the tone for that patient to say, wow. The other thing that's doing is I'm endorsing the doctor, and that's so critical for the team to do.
Right.
To say you're getting ready to meet a really great person. Everybody on the team should be able to endorse the doctor in their own way. They also need to understand the doctor's culture. So I might say, may I tell you a little bit more about the doctor and about what he believes in when he's treating his patients?
Yeah.
So I need to know what he or she believes in. So I can say, here's what he believes in. He believes in being as conservative as possible while giving you, for improving your dental health and giving you the dental appearance that you're seeking, or that or the smile that you're looking for. So, and this is how he does that, or this is how she does that.
Mm-hmm.
So the other reason for doing that, think about this. Kirk, what was the last movie you saw on the big screen?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot here. Gosh, I can't remember. We watch a lot of movies from home, believe it or not.
No, well, when you have children. Okay, so the last movie that I saw was The Zookeeper's Wife, which is a true story, and it's about the Warsaw, Poland, and great movie.
Yeah.
The next day, I probably told almost everybody about the movie that I saw the night before.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks, and I haven't talked about it very much. I mean, I remembered it because I knew, we were talking about this. And I think about a patient calling an office, or a new patient is more likely to talk about that practice right after they hang up the phone and say, wow, I called this office and that was different. Or right after the new patient experience in the practice to say, that I have never had an experience like that before. I have never had anybody spend that much time learning about me, talking to me. Oh my gosh, these people love this doctor so much. He must be, or she must be, an amazing person. I mean, that's why it's so important. Like when a dental assistant and a dental hygienist says, "Can I tell you a little bit about me and why I'm here?" I have a client in Oregon, and she says, "My name is Crystal, and I have worked for Dr. Curtis for 25 years. Let me tell you why."
Yeah.
First of all, 25 years working for the same doctor, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And she tells why that doctor is so special. And when she says, he is careful and he is meticulous. He is passionate about continuing education. He is a constant learner. He's always bringing innovation to his patients. And he's always offering his best. And just, after working for him so long, I just can't imagine working for anybody else.
Yeah.
That is an amazing endorsement for the patient to say, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Now, in all fairness, if you're a team member watching this, you might say, well, Debra, that's easy, but my doctor doesn't talk to me. I never got any training, because the truth of it is, a lot of times dentists hire team members on very little homework, very little training, and they put them in a role and say, go, right? And they're not really equipped. And I want you to talk about this, because we might assume that everybody knows this, but really equipping a team member, one of the most important things is the open-ended question, not necessarily closed-ended questions. Can you explain what that is and why that's so important in great restorative dentistry?
Well, I think what you're talking about, I want to go back to one of the things you said. You said sometimes, if I say I'm a dental assistant, I've had 2 years experience, the doctor hires me without any training and says, okay, you're a warm person and I need you. So there you go. Keep your knees bent here. So I think that it's important, if you're listening to this, and if you're listening to this with your team, turn to your doctor and say, tell me a little bit more about you.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about you. Sometimes I'll ask team members, do you know where your doctor went to dental school and what year he or she graduated?
That is so funny, because they don't.
They don't know. They have no idea. Mm-hmm. So I think that's turn to the doctor and say, tell me a little bit more about you, and why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
And tell me what you believe in. And so I think that's important, because that that means that team member can go to the patient and say, let me tell you a little bit more about my doctor. But also, maybe I don't have that information. Then the question would be, what's my story? Why did I get into dentistry? We just hired a young extern. She came through us through a rotation through a dental assisting program, and she's 23 years old. Mm-hmm. She worked in a restaurant before she got involved in dentistry. So we had to coach her what to say. We had to coach her how to meet people, how to meet a patient. You go out, you look them in the eye, you have a nice, gentle but firm handshake, and you introduce who I am, mm-hmm. as opposed to, just standing there and saying, "Hey, I'm right. Dylan." She has to establish her credibility fairly quickly. First of all, because she's young.
Right.
So she's got to establish that she's credible. So that's one of the ways she will do it, by human touch and by looking the patient in the eye that says, I'm comfortable and confident with myself. So I'm comfortable and confident in working with you during your care. And then I said, well, Dylan, what's your story? And she tells the patient a great story. And she said, I heard about this doctor when I was in school. I heard about his practice. And so I called and asked if I could shadow. Okay. And she said, and then they let me come in and shadow for a while. And she said, then I went out on other interviews. I went into other dental offices and interviewed. And there was nothing like this practice. Mm-hmm. And she said, every day I said, oh, please, I hope they find a way to let me stay. And she said, I started at the top. Yeah. And I can't even imagine working my way back down. So she's telling patients this story. And patients are going, wow, I must be in an amazing place. And you must be an amazing young woman. So not only did she establish our credibility, she also established her credibility. Yeah. And now the patients come out and they say, oh, I hope you keep Dylan. She's wonderful. I hope you keep her. She's fabulous.
That's awesome.
And she's 23.
What a great start. What a great start. And we did get a question from our friend Deepak, who asked this question. He said, I have a rule at our office for the team to say my pleasure, often to symbolize, their true desire to serve. I also have a rule, never hang up the phone until the patient hangs up. Do you, Debra, have any quick and dirty yet highly innovative or impactful rules that you just have that have impressed you or you'd like to share just in your office or that you've seen?
Well, a couple of them. I always stand to greet. I never sit down and have the patient approach me. I always stand to greet. It's like, and this is what I tell my offices and my audiences. If someone were coming to your house and rang your doorbell, what would you have to do? You'd have to get up and answer the door. Mm-hmm. So get up. Right. They just came through your door, so get up and greet them. The other thing that does, again, it establishes your presence, and I think that's important. I also, when there's tons, but I also, when they're leaving, I always sort of touch them on the arm a little bit. Right. And I say, you know what? Thank you so much for the privilege of serving you. We're really honored that you're a patient here. I want to thank them thank you so much for the privilege of taking care of you. Right. And then if that is a great lead-in to say, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I love it here. You know what? I hope you would tell other people, and we would love you to go online and write a review about our practice. Yeah. And actually, in many offices, they can do it right there. That's important. Right. Another couple, this sounds so trite, but not. If a patient from the operatory has to get up to go to the restroom, then we adopt the Marriott rule. Okay, the Marriott rule is you escort people. When people ask you where to go, you don't tell them. You don't point and say, oh, it's over there, the restroom's down the hall. You take them there. Yeah. So when a patient asks to be excused to go to the restroom, we take them there. And, we don't stalk them, but we always escort them back into the operatory as well. We don't let them walk in and out by themselves. Because many times, an operatory is an operatory is an operatory. And sometimes they walk in the wrong one. Right. So we are there for them as well. So we escort them. So I think that's pretty critical. We don't leave them unattended. Right. Yeah. So it's attention. Yeah. But the also important thing, and you and I talked a little bit about this. We have our conversations should be intentional. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a young assistant in dental business school last weekend, and I said, well, tell me what you talk about with patients. And she says, well, I usually compliment something that they're wearing, and I sometimes talk about the weather. And I say, you know what? Let's be more intentional with our conversations. Let's ask the patients questions about dentistry, or tell me why you're here.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about your expectations today. And even to the point, sometimes we say to the patient, today we're going to be doing 3 crowns on your upper right side, as opposed to say, let's verify, the treatment that we have planned today. We're going to be working in your upper right side. What questions can I answer for you about that? See, and as opposed to say, do you have any questions? An open-ended question is, what questions can I answer for you about that?
Right. That is awesome.
As opposed to, and doctors should be saying that when the doctor's recommending treatment, or the doctor's doing a treatment presentation. Oftentimes, the doctor will start at tooth number 1, take a breath at tooth number 16, finish at tooth number 32, take a breath and say, do you have any questions? Well, patients are overwhelmed.
Right.
Overwhelmed.
And inevitably they say, no, I don't have any questions, which means, it kind of stops right there. Now, Debra, this is so good because I want to go back to the intentional part, because while you might be watching this go, well, I know that doing it is a whole nother ball game. And we often see, as you do, a lot of times in hygiene, it can turn into just a very, it's not intentional at all, and it's rapport building for a whole entire hour. Now, rapport is important, but we talk about ingredients in effective patient communication. You've got to be intentional about your questions. And I love the question that you ask a patient when you're reviewing a treatment plan and they come into hygiene. I love the question. Can you talk about that and how it works in your whole process?
Sure. Well, I think when we talk about the hygiene department, and we talk about the importance of the statistic or monitoring what additional treatment is being diagnosed and accepted from hygiene. Mm-hmm. So many times, and I say this caringly and respectfully, but many times you and I go into dental offices and they really have a hygiene mill. Right. And sometimes the doctors are very proud that their hygienists can see 20 patients a day, and I'm exaggerating, I hope, 20 patients a day in a 9-hour day. And they go to their dental study clubs and say, hey, my hygienist can see 20 patients, and says, mine sees 22, and mine sees 24. And they value the number of patients and the production per day, more importantly, than what additional treatment is being diagnosed from hygiene. Mm-hmm. And sometimes hygienists, they take a look at a patient's records and they say, okay, I've got 50 minutes. Oh my gosh, I've got all this I need to do and turn my room around. And so they do see an existing treatment plan on a patient. Something that has already been discussed with the patient, but the patient hasn't done it. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a kind of an, oh, by the way, or hey, you need to have this done. Okay, sit down, shut up, open wide. I've got to, I'm ready to start. Mm-hmm. And I think it's body language as well as timing. The question about additional treatment should happen at the top of the appointment, not at the bottom. Okay. Most hygienists listening to this, and you know this, Kirk, at the end of the appointment, what's the patient want to do? Mm-hmm. They want to get out of there. Yeah. They're trying to take off the drape and, okay, where's the chair? Where's the button? How can I get up? They are not in a mode or a mood to listen to, here's the additional treatment we've already talked about. Mm-hmm. Bad timing. Right. So the timing is that the question should come at the top of the appointment, and the hygienist should lean back a little bit in an unhurried manner and say, this is some of the treatment. This is the treatment that doctor has already recommended for you that we have yet to complete. Tell me what has prevented you from having that done. And then be quiet.
Right.
And hear what they say.
Right.
And whether it be money, insurance, time, it's typically money or time. And so then we can answer those. And the hygienist has a responsibility to say, if we could expedite the procedures and really work effectively with our schedule, so that we can make it we can be time sensitive with you, and we can find a way to make that affordable for you. Is it time to revisit this? Shall we revisit this now? And so I think that question happens at the top of the hour.
Yeah, that's so good. Now, if you're watching this, you'll see what she did. She asked a question where you couldn't say yes or no. Tell me what's prevented you from moving forward with this treatment that, we've both talked about is so important. So patients have to share that with you. And no matter what it is, you now have it there and you can address it throughout the whole thing. This also, you're really good at the financial conversation too, because you and I've talked about this. When patients ask you how much is this going to cost, a lot of people freak out and think, well, they don't want to do this, but it's an opportunity, right?
It's a great opportunity, and sometimes doctors have a very formal, or they have a very planned treatment presentation, treatment consultation. And I always ask the question, and when I'm in class, or if I'm doing, again, dental business school, I'll say, okay, let me give you this scenario, and you tell me what you heard. Mm-hmm. I said, you're presenting treatment to a patient, and they say, wow, well, we'll back up. Wow, that sounds like a lot of money. Or, wow, how much is it? And I say, what did you hear? And to the person, almost everyone says they heard that the patient had an objection about money, or the patient had an objection about insurance coverage. And okay. I said, you heard the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. You heard the wrong thing. Because typically, when the patient moves to the point of how much is it, in their mind, they have already processed that they've had the work done, and now they're trying to churn how to afford it. Right. Now they've already moved on to, okay, how can I afford this?
Right.
So in their mind, they've already said yes. Here's something else I think is pretty important. It's not a question, but it's something to think about, since we're talking about money and treatment planning. So many times when we talk to a patient about a treatment or a restorative need, we almost apologize for it. We say,
right.
You need a crown. Oh.
Why do we do that?
Why do we do that? Why do we do that? As opposed to saying, you know what? Yeah, you brought in a zinger of a problem, or you brought us a situation. Mm-hmm. It's causing you concern, and it should.
Right.
And the good news is we have a solution.
That's awesome.
As opposed to apologizing for being able to help them, let them know that you have a solution for the problem that they brought you.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And we also have, I think we have a cloud. You didn't realize I had 7 cups of coffee today. Yeah.
Hey,
I've had one. So
and I know you well enough. You and I can talk for 5 hours and have 300 tips of make your practice.
But I think that's also, the critical piece. We have a tendency to approach the patient with, they're hoping I don't find anything wrong. They're hoping they don't need anything, as opposed to the patient came to me wanting me to take them to a better place.
Right.
They didn't call to say, hey, I'm calling, so I'm going to want to make an appointment so you can tell me I don't need anything. Right. No, the patient calls and say, I'm obviously inspired to make a change in my dental life, whatever that may be, and I want you to take me there. I want you to help me make that change.
Yeah.
So here I am with the tools, and here I am with the talent to help you do that. No apologies necessary.
Yeah. Now, can I ask you this question? Because again, your practice is a fabulous practice. And what if I'm a 32-year-old dentist watching this saying, look, my practice isn't so fabulous. But Debra, I'm sure you could speak to this. You're not immune from the regular questions other offices get. I mean, I'm sure people call you and say, I've heard about Dr. Nash. How much are his crowns? Is this going to be expensive? I'm sure you don't get, you don't have days where no one asks the insurance code. You're like, wow, a whole day, no one asked about insurance. Do you have those days?
No, never have those days. And by the way, we are a general practice. We're general practice. And somebody asks us, oh, well, and again, I consult in other offices. So, I mean, right. I'm in his office, but I work with other practices that are, my 150 new patients in a rural North Carolina, they crank out some beautiful, beautiful cosmetic and aesthetic elective dentistry as well. So, wow. We're general practice, and I always say, well, your practice must be in a high-end district. The practice is geographically established between 2 high areas, but we're actually in a suburb. There's a beautiful high-end area up by the lake that's about 3 exits up from us, and then the others is about, from exit 10 beyond, so we're at 13 exits past. So we're in the middle. We're in a suburb. So here's the questions that I often get, and I'll give you the answers. So patients will say, first of all, I love it when they say, are you accepting new patients? We say, oh, absolutely, especially with people who have a voice as nice as yours.
Oh, that's awesome.
Say that.
Yeah.
And we'll say, how much do you charge for a new patient examination? Or do you charge? Or do you offer free consultations? Mm-hmm. I say, I'd be happy to tell you how we handle our new patient fees. Before I do, may I ask you a few questions? I just turned the question, I just took control of the conversation because I started asking a question.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, never answer a question with a question. Oh, I say, I'd be happy to tell you. How much do you charge for crowns or veneers? I'd be happy to tell you about our fees. I always tell my clients, avoid saying, I'm sorry, you don't quote fees over the phone. Because obviously the patient's going to say, well, thank you very much. Click, hang up the phone and call somebody else. So I always say, I'd be happy to discuss our fees with you. Before I do, may I ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
Why did you choose our office to call?
Right.
I mean, they've been calling around. So why did you choose our office? Well, I Googled you. So you had an opportunity to see the quality of care that we provide our patients. You saw an example of doctors' beautiful work. Yeah.
Right.
So let me tell you a little bit more about that. And I'll say, and I'll say, here's the quality of care that we provide. And I would make this statement. I say, if you are choosing your practice based on the lowest fee possible, we're probably not the practice you're going to choose.
Right.
If you're choosing your practice based on the quality of care that you're going to receive, based on the professionalism of the team, based on the passion and the commitment that we have to do beautiful work in a caring environment, will be the practice that you want.
Right.
And I'll say, here's our philosophy. Whether you pay $400 or $4,000, if you're not happy, you paid too much.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That is very true.
Yeah. So I learned this little statement from Jimmy Dean Sausage. This is so funny. I'm a chili cook, so Jimmy Dean Sausage is the best sausage to use in chili.
Yep.
And Jimmy Dean, when he first made sausage, he said, and the cost of his sausage is higher than most sausage. And he says, I'd rather explain the cost of the cost and the quality of my product once than have to apologize for its quality over and over again.
Yeah.
And I have stolen that and used that in dentistry.
That
it's a great line. Yeah. It's a great line. So when shoppers call, I always say I'd be happy to discuss our fees.
Mm-hmm.
So that let me ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
We hear hey, I have MetLife Insurance, are you a network? I said, oh, I'm so glad that you're giving me an opportunity to tell you more about that. So I say, so I'll talk about that. I say, we do accept insurance. We are not in network with any provider. May I tell you why? I'm not going to throw it, shove it down their throat or become defensive.
Right.
And I say, may I tell you why? So I'm asking permission. And I say, a doctor made a decision long ago that he would offer his patients one standard of care that wouldn't be dictated by the exclusions, exceptions, or limitations of any particular plan.
That's awesome. Awesome. This is so good. And again, getting great questions here. Deepak asked the question, the one thing I noticed striving to improve effective patient communication is verbal skills for the front team and the back team. But often what gets ignored is communication between the two groups. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, so he's asking between the front office team and the back office team?
And the back, because I would agree with that, because you and I teach a lot of the same, you're brilliant with the concepts up front, and then it's about the back. But what about between them? Which is interesting, because sometimes, not in your practice, but other practices, you can see camps starting to form a little bit. Maybe the front doesn't talk to the back, or, what are some good tips for maybe verbal skills or effective ingredients between the front and back? Anything?
Well, here's a couple of things, and this may answer the question or may not answer the question. And it's kind of interesting, because you might say, well, what does that have to do with it? But it has a lot. So here's one of the things I would recommend, certainly between front and back. I think sometimes that we don't train the business team enough about what goes on in the back, so they don't have any idea of the intensity required or the attention required to deliver the beautiful dentistry that we deliver. Mm-hmm. But I also see this happening oftentimes. A dental assistant or dental hygienist brings a patient to the front desk and talks to the front desk as though the patient is invisible.
Right.
So they talk to the front desk and say, okay, Mrs. Smegley's going to need an appointment for 2 crowns, and we're going to go to a post-and-core build-up, and we're going to go ahead and deliver her night guard that appointment, so she's going to need 2 hours. And they talk to each other, and they don't talk to the patient. So if we have effective communications, and oftentimes that's going to be probably computer generated, computerized, then what should happen is when the dental assistant or hygienist is releasing the patient to the front, the conversation should really happen with the patient. The business team member should already have all that information in the computer. So when the assistant or hygienist is releasing the patient, they're turning to the patient and saying, "You were a great patient today. It's such a pleasure having you in the practice. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. And I know you can't wait to get this done." And so they shouldn't, the focus should be on the patient at the front desk. I think that there needs to be more cross-training between front and back. I think the clinical team should also know, they should know how to collect money. They should know how to make an appointment. There should never be, "That's not my job." That there should always be that. In fact, there's only two reasons why I don't do something in my practice. Number one, I don't know how, or number two, I don't want to. If I don't know how to do it, then I can be trained how.
Right.
If I don't want to do it, then we need another type of conversation. So I really think in order to improve that communication between front and back team members, that they should be cross-trained.
Yeah.
If it just so happens that I'm taking a new patient phone call, let's say I'm the single front desk person. Team members sometimes don't like being called front desk people. So
I know that.
I know. I'm the single team member. I'm taking a new patient phone call. I'm not going to interrupt that phone call.
Right.
The hygienist is bringing out her patient to be checked out. Well, I'm on a new patient phone call. So what's going to happen? Is the hygienist going to leave the patient standing there and saying, "Deborah's going to be right with you," and go back to turning their room around?
Right.
Au contraire, the hygienist should be trained to be able to come around that desk and say, "You know what? I see Deborah's on a call. Let me go ahead and check you out so you don't have to wait."
Yeah.
That to me is incredible customer service. So I know some people listening to this saying, "You want me to what?" Oh yeah. So walk in my shoes.
Right. Well, the true art of this is, teamwork is really how do we work together, not how do I do my job and pass this along to you. So I totally agree with you. I think in this industry, which again, we love so much, we overthink collecting money and scheduling. It's not that hard. Like anyone can be.
The more matter of fact you are about it, the easier it is to do it. It's a part of doing the business. And the more matter of fact you are and the more you expect to be paid, then the patient will pay you.
Oh, yeah. And you said it earlier, too. The more you believe, the more this just becomes easier to just do. And once you believe, and so I love how you said that, the only reasons why you wouldn't do that. So if you're watching this and your team won't do it, maybe ask those questions.
Yeah. So if we had our assistant just celebrated working with us for 10 years. And when we first hired her, she said, "I don't like asking for money." And I said, "Well, we'll teach you how." There wasn't then you don't have to.
Right.
It's like, "Well, we'll teach you how to ask for money." She's one of the best collectors, if you will, that we have. Of course, in our practice, and we do a really cool thing, and we schedule our patients with a preoperative visit, and they prepay. We never, our cancellation no-show rate for a restorative appointment, for a major restorative appointment, is 0.
Yeah.
0.
Now, can you describe that? Because that is, I've seen that in certain areas. Tell us what that is and why that works with great predictability.
Okay. It's one of my favorite things.
Right.
It's because I watch people, and I watch offices that they have a big appointment scheduled. That it's a 4 or 5 hour appointment, and the patient comes in. They're expecting their payment that day, and the patient walks in the door at 8 o'clock and says, "Oh, was I supposed to pay today? I didn't bring my checkbook." Or, "We're just getting ready to go on or so you say, "Oh, you didn't bring your checkbook? Well, we can do this with a Visa or MasterCard." "Oh, no. We're getting you ready to go to Disney World for 2 weeks, and I don't want to tie up my credit card by paying my dental bill." So we have a decision. Do we prep and pray? Do we turn the patient away? We have 5 hours scheduled. What are we going to do? Or the patient leaves a message on the answering machine. Beep. "Hi, this is Debra Nash. I'm calling because I won't be there for my 8 o'clock appointment, and it's 1:45. And now we've got a 5 hours slot to fill.
Yeah.
So we're going to solve that problem. The other thing that I found is the patient does bring in their payment, but now the doctor or the team members are taking photographs. They're taking additional radiographs. They're taking impressions for temporaries. They're doing all of this preemptive work prior to the doctor actually anesthetizing and starting the restorative procedure, usually 30 to 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we really aren't starting to cut, if you will, 40 minutes into the appointment. So I said to myself, wait a minute. When you're going in for a surgical procedure, if you're going to go have surgery, what do you have to do before you check into the hospital? You typically have to go in and have a preoperative visit with the doctor, and you have to go to the hospital and get all your paperwork done.
Right.
You know, which one of them is directed to physicians, which is kind of scary, but we have to get all of that done. They have to verify insurance and what your copay may be, and all of that is taken care of prior to the day of your surgery. So when you walk in that morning of your surgical procedure, you're going right into prep and surgery. So I thought, voila. Right. If we could schedule patients who have major restorative dentistry, they're getting ready to schedule, not single unit restorations or minor procedures, but for the big prep appointments, which could be 4 or 5 hours, they are pre-scheduled with a treatment coordinator, an assistant, a hygienist, to come in and have all of that preliminary work done before the day of the restorative preparation appointment.
Yeah.
First of all, it saves doctors time about an hour. The patient comes in, they have all of that preliminary work taken care of, making sure we have all the information we need, all the paperwork is filled out, if they're sedating, not sedating, if we have to give them those instructions, and they pay their fee at that visit.
Right.
So the patient's committed.
Yeah, it's brilliant because when people pay in advance, they show up, especially in a very busy area, whether you practice in Charlotte or Atlanta or a big city, it's an important component because there's nothing more stressful than seeing your doctor with 4 hours of open chair time.
I know what he's or she's going to do. They're going to be at the front desk bugging me, and I'm not going to get my work done. They're going to, or we're going to try and move we have all other solutions. But I think that's also, let's say that, how would you respond to, I'll put myself on the line here. I'm awake and alive. And how would I respond to the patient who walks in at 8 o'clock and says, oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to pay today. What? So, and no, we're getting ready to go to Disney World. So no, I don't want to use my credit card because we're going to be using that for our vacation. Right. Well, one of my options would be, you know what? Let's go ahead and have you apply for Care Credit. Let's go ahead and have you apply for a healthcare financing plan to get that, taken care of for you. It only takes a few minutes. We'll do that in the office. And if they say, I really don't want to do that, then my recommendation is I don't want to say, well, I'm sorry, if you don't have your money, we're not going to be able to see you today. What a negative thing to say to somebody.
Right.
So I have another way of saying that, and it would be, Kirk, we don't want to put you in an atmosphere of financial discomfort. It sounds like you were not really prepared to embark on this today. Let's schedule you at another time when you're more prepared and it's more of a financial comfort for you.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Well, we always say communication is responsibility of the sender. So if that ever happens in the morning, it's one of those things you're like, where did we go wrong? And the other thing too, Debra, that you guys do is it's not so much about the money. You're having one little extra touch with the patient where you're really, building the relationship, and it's it's one of those things that we don't really pay very much attention to, but in dentistry, it's about trust, it's about intimacy, it's about all those things, and these little touches really, really add to a better experience down the road.
You bring two things up that I think I want to make sure I mention. Number one, at that pre-op appointment, for us, when a patient's going to have, and I'm saying in Ross's practice, when a patient's going to have some major restorative treatment done, and whether that be, it's typically for us 6 restorations or more, whether that be direct bonding or indirect restorations, we give them a kit. We give them a Sonicare toothbrush. My gosh, they're paying me X amount of dollars per unit. I'm happy to mention it, but so I'm going to give them a $49 Sonicare. I'm going to give them a Hummingbird. So because we want their tissue to be nice and healthy, and so they're going to get our OxyFresh, a bottle of OxyFresh mouthwash. They're going to get OxyFresh toothpaste. They're going to get a Sonicare. They're going to get a Hummingbird. They're going to get instructions on how to take care of their temporaries so that when they come back, they have nice, healthy tissue. So they get a gift. They get a gift at that preoperative visit. So I think that's important. The other thing I want to mention when you talk about extra touch, I have a favorite quote.
Tell me.
I love quotes. You do too, but I love quotes. Olympics are won by a tenth of a second. Olympic races are won by a tenth of a second. So if I could do that 1/10 more in my practice, 1/10 more, what a difference that would make. So my other little tip I would give offices, I think sometimes it takes an extra touch, even with a new patient. So the new patient comes in. Let's say that we're going to go back to the old adage that the new patient came in thinking they didn't need anything. They've been seeing Doc Brown for 20 plus years, going in every 6 months to have their teeth cleaned, no brains, no headaches. And now they come to you. They come to your practice with, you have a different set of eyes, you have a different treatment philosophy, and you find things that Dr. Brown didn't. You're letting them know that there are some concerns and there are some restorative expectations or some restorative needs that need to be addressed, and they may go home, they may leave and say, well, I'll call you, or let's see what my insurance will pay, I need to check with my schedule. They're not really committed yet.
Right.
They go home, and I want you to think about how many questions come up after the patient walks out the door. And I use myself as a story. A lot of people know that I was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 2011. I walked out of the radiologist when I got the news, and kind of a little bit, deer caught in headlights. I was a bit dazed. I didn't have any questions then, but boy, as I was driving away, boy, did I start having questions.
Right.
That's when the questions started coming. So I'm thinking and I thought, wow, think about new patients who are given information, whether it be they thought they were coming in for standard cleaning and you find that they have periodontal disease. And they leave with that news, and they're going to try and go home and even tell their friends about it. But wouldn't it be great that 1/10 more to call a new patient? We oftentimes call patients after a surgical procedure or after anesthetic or after SRP. But what about the new patient who came in hoping you wouldn't find anything wrong, who hoping they were going to get a traditional cleaning and you found something more? Wouldn't it be great to call that patient and say, Kirk, hi, this is Debra from Dr. Nash's office. Doctor asked me to call you.
Right.
I'm sure there were questions that came up after you left the office the other day. And he asked me to make myself available to answer those questions for you.
Yeah.
Wow. What I found for my clients who do this, for every 2 calls that they make, one person is ready to appoint. They needed one more connect.
Okay.
One more touch from you.
That's really good to know. And the questions, like you said at the beginning, when the person asking the questions, is in control of the conversation, they're the answer. They're the ingredient to all of this. If you're watching this, please take note. Debra, you're so good with your verbal skills because you've seen everything in dentistry. I'd love to do a separate episode on the craziest things you've ever seen in any office. You're in this industry long enough. Nothing really surprises you, and you also see patterns in which people do really, really good stuff. And what you're talking about is really
fun. I mean, I will, when I hear a great language skill or I see a great thing, I will say, I'm stealing that. I'm so go ahead. Like Lois said, I'm using your words. I mean, I love being a consumer. Not that I'm a major shopper, but I love watching what is effective.
Right.
What is effective and what questions are effective. In fact, I'll be as brief as I can about this. When I was about 24 years old, I lived in Seattle. I was a dental assistant. I'd just gotten my degree in education, hadn't gotten my job as a teacher yet. And I drove into a major audiovisual store. That's the days when we were buying stereos and turntables and speakers and woofers. And, we had to buy the unit, the system.
Right.
Now we buy an Alexa or a Pandora, So when I walked in, and I was probably wearing a T-shirt and blue jeans, I was driving a Datsun B210, which they don't even make anymore. So that's sort of like a dummy down a Kia, and that's what I was driving. And I walked in, and he said, "May I help you?" And I said, "I want to buy a stereo." And he didn't say, "What's your stereo insurance?" He didn't look me once up and down and say, "Well, you're 24 and you're wearing jeans and a T-shirt, so you probably can't afford very much." He didn't say, "What's your budget?" He said, "So that I can help you, may I ask you a few questions?" Hello, ding, ding, ding. Stole that. And he said, tell me a little bit more about what you listen to. Tell me a little bit more about, you listen to the radio more, stereo, or tapes, cassette tapes, or albums. I said, radio. And he said, AM or FM? I said, FM. He said, ah. So the most important component that you're going to buy is going to be a receiver. So let's go look at receivers. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say, again, how much did you expect to spend on receivers? First of all, he gave me some information. I didn't realize that that was going to be the important component.
Right. So
he takes me to the room. He says, I want to show you what I consider to be the top-of-the-line receiver today. He says, what kind of music do you listen to? I said, jazz. Mm-hmm. He said, 96.9 Jazz FM? I said, yes. Mm-hmm. He said, let's put 96.9 Jazz FM on this receiver. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And he said, I said, that is an amazing sound. He said, you like the quality of that sound? It's unbelievable. How much is it? See, I was ready to buy. Right. How much is it? When he told me, I said, I can't afford that. He said, that's great information. See, he didn't say, oh, well, he didn't get defensive. He didn't challenge it. He said, that's really good information. It's helpful to me. So what we need to do, we need to find another receiver that comes as close to the same quality as that one that's within your financial comfort. I said, yes. Mm-hmm. I didn't buy that top-of-the-line receiver. I bought a different one, but I went out of my perceived budget, what I thought I was going to spend, and I put the rest of the components together. Had he never showed me the top-of-the-line, I would have never known what I was and was not choosing. And so many times, dentists never show their patients the top of the line.
Right.
Because they're, what will my insurance cover? What's your budget? Let's say, I know where they live. I know their zip code. They go to church with me. So we assume that the patient can or can't afford. And so then we avoid showing the patients the top of the line. Always get permission to tell your patient what you can do for them. So again, that open-ended question, would you allow me to tell you what I could do for you if you gave me carte blanche?
This is outstanding.
So get permission rather than saying, okay, I'm going to tell you what you need. Or, oh, this is even worse. Yeah. Okay, so I've just done my examination. I'm going to leave the room now, and someone else is going to come in and tell you about your treatment. I am not a big fan of that.
Yeah.
I think doctors need to learn how to present their own treatment plans. You're the one who's going to be doing my dentistry. You're the one that I'm going to be paying. You're the one who should be looking me in the eye and saying, would you allow me to tell you what I could do?
Yeah. This is awesome. I love how you ask questions, and this is so powerful. And now, I'm sure when people are watching this, they're going to have questions for you about the question. So if I'm watching this later on, how do I get a hold of you, Debra? How would I find you? How do I reach out to you? How do I ask you these questions?
Well, a couple things. You could send a carrier pigeon. That works. Okay. I've got a great backyard. They fly right in. No, they could call me. They could call me at my office. Okay. They can email me. Do you want me to give you my email address?
Please, yes.
Okay. So I'll give you it's Debra Engelhardt-Nash, okay. And it's Debra, and it's Engelhardt, Nash, Nash,
okay.
at gmail.com.
Okay.
And I don't have a meter on my phone. They can call me. I don't charge for answering questions. No one has ever abused my time, ever, on the telephone or with emails, ever. Yeah. So, in 30 plus years, it's just never been a problem for me. I'm happy to answer questions.
Yes, you are. You're very gracious with your time, and I appreciate it so much. And
by the way, here's another important question. I know you want to go now, don't you? It's time for lunch.
No, we can go for a couple more hours.
Here's another question that's important. I think it's really important that in the process of the patient's experience with you, you should ask them, how are you feeling about your visit so far? I mean, we assume. And once again, would you allow me to examine you? I mean, that could even be that. But how are you feeling about your visit so far? Or how did you feel about your visit with us?
Right.
And get an answer. I mean, typically, the nice thing about that, and it may even be, the patient may not know what to say, but the patient is going to typically say, I feel really good.
Yeah.
And so what a nice thing that the patient is leaving on that nice note. And then I'm going to do it, I'm going to touch them on their arm and say, I'm so honored that you allowed me to see you. Yeah. And I hope you tell your friends about us.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, I am crazy grateful. And if you're watching this, tell your friends about Debra. She is great. So stay on for a second, Debra. I want to talk to you just a couple more things, and we're just going to say goodbye to our viewers here for a second. Okay. For those of you that are watching, thank you so much for watching. And again, if you have questions, please add them to the feed, and Debra will get back to you, or you can reach out to Debra directly. And keep giving us suggestions for great shows. We're going to do our best to see how we can make all of these happen in a relatively timely fashion. And until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practice Show. You guys have a great day.